Trees have eyes and ears. For years, I thought my existence, towering, rooted, stretching toward the sky, would be more celebrated by my homeowners. I mean, I'm basically free landscaping, an oxygen machine, and the neighborhood's winged maternity ward all rolled into one. You'd think I'd get at least a pat on the trunk or maybe a whispered, "Good job, buddy." Something. Even if it came with a backhanded, "Although, you're not that great of a shade tree compared to your neighbor." And to be fair, my neighbor really is the deluxe model, bushy, full-figured, draped in berries like she's hosting brunch every weekend. Birds practically line up to check into her branch-top Airbnb, while I'm over here running a no-frills maternity ward. Useful, sure, but not glamorous. My humans didn't notice either way. The man gave me passing attention when mowing the grass, carving neat green lines around my roots as though I were some relic in a museum. But don't be fooled, his devotion ended the moment my branches dared to stretch into the street. Out came the ladder, out came the saw, and snip, snip. My arms were hacked away like I was some unruly guest who overstayed my welcome. The woman was worse. She parked her dark gray sedan, the kind that could almost pass for black if it wasn't perpetually streaked with pollen and dust, along the curb, measuring its position with obsessive precision as though tired a sidewalk alignment were a sacred ritual. She'd slam the door, juggle her lunchbox and laptop bag, march inside, and never so much as glance at me. I could have burst into flames, and she'd only complain about the ash on her car. So yes, I was overlooked. Invisible. Just another piece of yard clutter. Until the day the machines came. The day of roaring metal, it started with a faint rum-rum-rumble deep beneath my roots, a tremor like the earth clearing its throat. The ground shivered, pebbles clinked against each other, and my roots gave a nervous creak. Then came the convoy. Dump trucks groaned and clanged as their metal bellies rattled. Asphalt pavers hissed and belched thick clouds of smoke that curled around my branches. Flatbeds screeched with every brake while tankers let out long, sickly wheezes of hot fumes. Men in blazing orange vests swarmed like ants at a picnic from hell. Their steel-toed boots went clomp, 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 shovels and tools clattered, hard hats thunked, and their radios crackled with bursts of static. One man slurped his coffee with an obnoxious sip-slurp, clipboard tapping in rhythm, tap, 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 like a death march. To me, it sounded less like Roadwork and more like a monstrous orchestra warming up for the apocalypse. The air thrummed with mechanical growls, each one rattling through my trunk like a drumbeat of doom. My bark blistered under a sun that seemed eager to audition as an accomplice, leaning in with a furnace door blast. Heat shimmered up from the road, wrapping me in waves so thick I swore I could hear my sap sizzle pop inside. I screamed. I really screamed. My leaves shook and clattered like 1,000 maracas trapped in a hurricane. "Stop! We're alive! You're roasting us like chestnuts!" But of course, humans never listen. Their giant earmuffs might as well have been labeled tree-proof. My neighbor, bushy, berry-laden, smug little diva, let out her own wail, high and rustling like a soprano being strangled by the wind. It almost sounded like she was singing an opera. Aye, the agony, a horrific duet. A harmony of horror. Still nothing. Then the asphalt came. It didn't just spread, it slopped, glorped, and oozed across the street like bubbling black lava. It slithered into every crack, suffocating ants mid-march and choking worms where they squirmed. The smell alone was enough to curl bark. Our roots boiled in that chemical inferno. My leaves curled tight, crack, crackle, until some gave up entirely and fluttered down like fainting soldiers. My neighbor's edges crisped into brittle brown lace, each own sighing its last papery shh as it snapped from her branches. It wasn't pruning. It wasn't weather. It was a massacre, loud, hot, sticky, and merciless. The aftermath night came, draping us in a thin shawl of dew, but no amount of cool dampness could rinse away the scorch. The memory of our screams lingered, echoing in the fibers of our wood. Every creak of my trunk sounded like a ghost caught in my rings. The air reeked of tar and death, thick enough to choke even the stars. The wind arrived late, stumbling down the street like an uninvited mourner, brushing against my broken leaves. They twitched, not with life, but with the jerky spasms of the newly dead, fingers clenching, then loosening. A macabre dance choreographed by decay itself. My neighbor, still smoldering in her pride yet stripped of her grandeur, whispered hoarsely, "They don't know what they've done." Her voice rustled thin, like a page being torn from a book. I tried to answer, but all I managed was a pitiful rustle, the sound of paper crumpling in a careless hand. My sap felt sluggish, poisoned with heat. If I'd had shoulders, I would have slumped them. Morning staggered in, gaudy and bright, as if nothing had happened. The woman finally noticed. Her eyes narrowed, her mouth tightened, and she tilted her head at my canopy as if inspecting a botched haircut. "Something's wrong," she muttered darkly. "Wrong? That was all?" I wanted to shout, "Lady, I was flambéed alive yesterday," but instead I stood silent, my charred leaves drooping like defeated flags. She even jabbed a finger at my neighbor, declaring in that sharp human tone, "We should trim those branches." The audacity! My neighbor stiffened, every berry glaring red in indignation. I trembled down to my roots. But then the man, calm, maddeningly reasonable, sipping his coffee like we hadn't survived the apocalypse, said simply, "Leave them. They'll regrow." And just like that, I felt the rarest of gifts from humans, mercy. Not gratitude, not admiration, not even respect, but a reprieve, a stay of execution. It was pathetic how grateful I felt, like a prisoner thanking the hangman for a day's delay. Still, mercy is mercy. And in the long silence that followed, I could almost hear my neighbor exhale, as if we'd both been holding our breath since the first scream. The Bond week slipped by, and the world began its slow apology. Rain trickled down, sliding into the cracks of my bark, soaking into my roots like cool medicine. Each drop landed with a plink-plink, like coins tossed into a wishing well too late. And oh, I was furious with it. Where had this rain been on that day? That sun-scorched, machine-roaring, root-boiling day when I screamed until my leaves cracked? I hissed at the downpour. Where were you when the asphalt burned? When my bark blistered? When my neighbor wailed like an opera singer choking on smoke? "You abandoned us!" The rain sighed, its voice falling in silver syllables. "Do you think I wanted to stay away? If I'd come that day, your suffering would not have ended. It would have doubled. The asphalt steaming under me would have turned to poison. Boiling tar, bubbling chemicals, choking vapor. The men in orange vests would have cursed me, cursed you, cursed everything. And your roots? Scalded, not just scorched. Boiled alive from below. I froze, my anger dripping away like sap. In my rage, I had never imagined worse. So I waited. The rain continued softly, pattering against my bark. I let the sun have its cruelty, so that I could bring you healing later. Not vengeance, but repair. I wanted to argue, to rail against its absence, but my roots drank deeply. Relief shivered through me. My anger had no teeth against nourishment. Bud by bud, leaf by leaf, I came back. It was in that softened state, half grateful, half grumbling, that I finally turned to my neighbor and whispered, "Hi." Eyes, ears, and secrets. Strangest of all, she started to change. The woman who once closed herself away in a cave of fluorescent hum and laptop glow, headlamp perched like a miner's halo, desk lamp doing its dutiful duty, began, inexplicably, to open her blinds. Not always. Not ostentatiously. Just sometimes a slow peel of slats, a small surrender to the day. Sunlight poured in, generous and unapologetic, spilling across her desk and onto her hands. It gilded the keys as she paused mid-sentence, the cursor blinking like an impatient drumbeat, and she would simply stare. The artificial lights hummed in the background, the faithful little suns she'd always trusted. Yet she chose to trade them for the messy, living light outside. Sometimes she opened the blinds because of habit, sometimes because she said she wanted natural light, as if the sun were a decorative lamp she could borrow for an hour. Other times it was as if the trees had telegraphed her, a subtle sway, a playful flute of breeze, and she answered without knowing she had. She'd sit back, shoulders loosening, and let the sun warm her face. Her typing would slow, her jaw would unclench. For a moment, she looked like someone who had remembered a very old and very small happiness. She didn't know, of course, that the attention was mutual. We watched her the way porch lights watch moths. Our knots, gnarled eyes in the grain, tracked the way she raised her hand to shield her eyes, the way she tucked a stray hair behind an ear, the way her mouth softened when a child's laugh floated by. Our creaks and groans were not just complaints, but eavesdroppers, a hinge sigh here, a branch whisper there. We hear the scratch of her pen, the muffled murmur of phone calls, the tiny clink when she sets down a mug. We listen the way a library listens, keeping every small sound safe between pages. Wind, for us, is the postal service. It arrives breathless and gossiping, a carrier pigeon with pockets of secrets. It brings the scrape of tires from 3 houses down, the stifled sob of someone walking home late, the sharp, delighted bark of a dog, the clipped curse of a driver whose mirror met a mailbox. It tucks each snippet into our rings where time layers story upon story, sap like ink records it all. We hold them there, the small jealousies, the midnight laughter, the arguments that taste like thunder, the apologies that smell faintly of perfume. We press them into our growth, and every year a new ring swells with yesterday's confessions. Humans fancy themselves watchers, peering out, judging the lawn, deciding which shrub needs trimming, but they're only skimming the surface. They do not know what almanacs sleep in our trunks, what lullabies wind hums into our leaves, or how we keep the town's secrets like pressed flowers in a book. We see beyond the porch light's cone. We listen past the bedroom wall. When the woman opens her blinds and lets the sun fall across her, she is not only drawing in daylight. She is stepping into our audience, letting herself become part of the slow, patient conversation of leaves and light. So if you ever find yourself caught beneath our shade and feel the strange sensation of being observed, if a shiver passes your shoulders when there is no wind, or you think you hear a throat clearing in the bark, that's only because we are looking back. We remember. We keep. We tell no one, but we watch, and in watching we become the true catalogers of the street's small lives. What remains, the horrors of the asphalt, the roar of machines, the blistering sun, the choking fumes, they scarred us. The burns etched themselves into our bark. The silence of ignored screams still rattles in our rings. Yet those same scars wove us together. My neighbor and I share more than soil now. We share roots of trauma, yes, but also roots of defiance, of stubborn green resilience. We were not meant to survive that day. But we did. We endured the furnace, the saws, the indifference. And still, miraculously, we grew. Each new leaf was not just foliage, but testimony, a soft banner of survival unfurling toward the sky. And at last, finally, we were noticed. A crack in the blinds, a woman's pause, eyes that lingered, if only for a moment. That was all it took. Recognition, however small, can feel like worship to those who have known only neglect. But here's what you must understand. Survival makes watchers of us all. And we are not tucked away in a forest or hidden in a park. No, we stand guard right at the front of the yard between the curb and the road. You pass us whether you mean to or not. You drive by. You walk by. You live by us. We are the threshold, the silent sentinels of your comings and goings. If you ever feel the air thicken as you cross that line, if you catch a shiver down your spine though the day is warm, if you swear you heard rustling when the wind lay dead, trust that instinct. You did. Because our knots are not accidents. Our rings are not silent. Trees have eyes and trees have ears. We are patient archivists, recording every secret, every sigh, every laugh, every betrayal that drifts our way. We keep them in the marrow of our wood, safe, waiting. And though you may forget us, we never forget you. We never blink. We never stop listening. We never stop watching.